Welcome to the Never Too Early Fantasy Football Podcast, where it is never too early for fantasy football. My name is Jeff.
Alex.
As always, thank you for downloading, listening, liking, and commenting on our podcast videos. Please join our community by subscribing to us on the socials. Our handle on all platforms is at N2E We are also available on all major podcasting apps by searching N2E Fantasy. Alex, what do we have on today's show?
On this episode of the Never Too Early Fantasy Football Podcast, we are breaking down the league news this past week, and we will also be starting out our top rankings going into the 2024 season. So we will start with our top 15 tight end rankings. We don't just do 12, we're going to do 15. Jeff, are you ready to break down the news?
I sure am. There's still not a lot. We're still in the off-season mode. Camps have officially kicked off for some teams, and so that means there should be a lot more football news, maybe some injury news that's coming out along the way here. But let's get kicked off with 49ers wide receiver Brandon Aiyuk officially requesting a trade. I know we've been talking a lot about him. What do you think of this request, and what odds do you place on him actually being traded?
I think he's made it clear that he wants to get paid or he wants to leave. I think that he can become a distraction. I know that in the past they've done the same game with Bosa and they've done it with Deebo before eventually working it out. They've remained adamant that they still want him and that they're turning down trade requests. So I think it's unlikely he gets traded at this point. I'd give it just like a 30% chance to get traded throughout the whole season unless something changes. But if he becomes a headache, they may want to just get him off their hands and take as much as they can get for him. But Jeff, I know you have your thought process on this as well. And what do you think the best thing for them to do, and what do you think actually happens?
So, if I was a betting man, which I like fantasy football, so I guess I am a little bit of a betting man, I believe that Aiyuk will be in the 49ers uniform this year. I think getting rid of Aiyuk changes the dynamic of this team, and not in a good way, because they're kind of all in for 2024. Basically, they're paying their wide receiver, because Aiyuk is a top 10 technically paid wide receiver on the tag. Also, they're paying their running back. They're about to pay their quarterback. They're paying their tight end, George Kittle. They're paying their defense. So, like, this was an all-in year, and trading Brandon Aiyuk makes them worse for this year and kind of defeats the purpose that they were kind of building towards for 2024.
That's just interesting how it is right now, because I think that they could absolutely double down on this year and say you're playing out your contract. If you can't agree to a deal with us, try to get a Super Bowl while Brock Purdy's contract's still cheap. And then I think they could franchise tag him next year and still have Brock Purdy at the end of his rookie deal. And then from that point, it gets really fishy. But, you pointed out in the past with other players, do you want someone there that's unhappy? You got to take care of them, you got to pay them, or they're just going to sit there and be unhappy, be a locker room cancer, be a distraction. So sometimes it's best to move on from them and take what you can get. And I think that he's got a sky high value right now. You can lean on Ricky Pearsall. I mean, I know we're about to talk about him in a minute, but you did draft him in the first round to be likely a replacement for Brandon Aiyuk at some point. Maybe not this year, but maybe it could be this year. And you still have Kittle, who, yes, is coming off injury, but he was very effective last year when the receivers missed time. You have Jennings, who you just gave a new contract to. Then you have Deebo Samuel and Christian McCaffrey. So they have weapons, and maybe they can leverage this to get future draft picks as well as get a veteran player that they could play in another position, like play on the defensive side, at offensive line. I think that they could do well to leverage this now. But also, I could see keeping him and trying to go for a Super Bowl. But I think if you do that, I think really you can only do that once with him, the way his personality is. I don't know if he would handle it well going through the final year of his contract this year and then being franchise tagged next year. I don't know if you think that character issues or that could potentially be a problem, or if you would just played out that way, Jeff.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting. And I know you mentioned that there's some replacements with Purcell, and they've put him on the NFI list to start off the camp season here, and that is a pretty big deal because this is when he's going to be learning the playbook, running the routes. So if you did want to replace Brandon Ayuk, I know we're kind of blending these two topics together now, but if you really wanted to replace Ayuk, you would want to hit the ground running with a Ricky Purcell, to be very honest. Do you feel differently there, or do you feel he'll catch up really quickly?
Would want Ricky Pearsall ready to go, but I think he will catch up. I think they would lean on their other pass catchers and ease Ricky in. I know him coming onto that non-football injury list isn't the best way to start off the season, but from what I've been able to tell, they think it's short term and he should be back sooner rather than later. So I think it'll be fine. But if Ayuk gets traded at this point, sometime this year, it probably would be closer to the trade deadline. But I wouldn't put my money on it. I would suspect he plays out this year.
Yeah, me too. That's kind of where my money's at, and just where this team is going for 2024. But speaking of players with injuries, we have Ravens placing running back coming back from a torn ACL, Keaton Mitchell, on the PUP list to start off training camp. He can be activated at any time throughout training camp, but this just basically gives him time to rehab, get healthy, and move forward. There is a good chance that he may start the season on the PUP list and have to miss the first, I believe it's down to 4 games now that they have to miss on the PUP list. But there's a really good chance that that'll have to happen, considering when his ACL happened late in the season last year.
I like Keaton Mitchell as a potential dynasty stash or redraft stash late to just take a dart throw on him. In any league that I would have Derrick Henry in, because I believe in Derrick Henry this year on the Ravens offense, I would also want Keaton Mitchell because I think they would both have standalone value as well as Keaton would be a really nice backup if anything happened to Derrick Henry for whatever reason. I think he'll be back, and I think he'll be a valuable piece of that offense. He's the lightning to Derrick Henry's thunder, so I think they'd be a good 1-2 punch. So I'm really keeping an eye on him to see how that recovery goes for him.
Absolutely. We will see. Derrick Henry is a no-brainer starter this year in Baltimore, so it's sad because he was so electric last year that he'd basically be relegated to a non-factor this year, or dart throw late this year if he was fully healthy going into this year. So we'll see how long the Henry and Ravens relationship lasts. But Keaton Mitchell here has a little bit of time to get healthy now. It's kind of like a little bit of a blessing in disguise for him.
Yeah, I think that Derrick Henry is the type of running back that they've been looking for. And they've been trying to get a lead running back, not necessarily a full workhorse, but a lead running back. And they've had a lot of issues with injuries because they've had, obviously, recently Keaton Mitchell, they've had J.K. Dobbins constantly injured. Even Gus Edwards and Justice Hill have gone through injuries themselves. But I think someone like Henry's pretty durable. He's pretty tough. He's a downhill runner. And I think Keaton Mitchell is a guy that needs to get in space, and I think that together they'll be a good combo. And maybe when Henry is retired or too old to be the starting running back, maybe Keaton Mitchell will really have developed by that point.
That is the hope and the plan, and hopefully they'll have a fully healthy running back this year for the first time in a while.
We'll see. We know that they have a running back at the quarterback position, right, Jeff?
That's what you thought. That's what you referred to him as for the longest time, but you finally come around to him actually being a decent NFL quarterback, which we should mark this down, folks. Alex has changed his mind on one thing, so just mark it down.
You just can't have any more performances like they did in the playoffs last year against, I think, the Chiefs. You can't fall apart like that in your passing game. So if he continues to do stuff like that, I will reverse it back to being a running back for the quarterback position.
Some of that, though, was the defensive coordinator who has just happened to be on fire in the postseason. Ended up getting a huge raise.
Spags, for Kansas City. But part of it is poor game planning. They've been a run-first team for the entire regular season. In that one game, they tried to pass too many times, which, makes Lamar look bad. So I think they need to get back to what they do best, and that's running the ball.
Sounds good. So I don't really have a good topic changing line here, but the Cleveland Browns, who re signed Cade York in the offseason, have now extended incumbent place kicker, to a 3-year deal. And they and Dustin Hopkins now are married for, it seems like, the next 3 or 4 years. What do you make of this? And do you think it's smart to extend a kicker when you do believe that there's supposed to be a kicking battle going into the season?
I think he's better than the previous kicker that already got paid, but it doesn't make sense to give two guys long contracts. So I don't know what Cleveland is doing. I never know what Cleveland is doing from a roster standpoint. They make boneheaded decisions like giving fully guaranteed money to someone who had criminal issues as well as didn't play much in Deshaun Watson, and then they traded for Jerry Jeudy and gave him a huge extension, despite the fact he doesn't look like he is that great of a wide receiver. And now they're giving two kickers money. So no, nothing they do makes sense to me, Jeff.
Yeah, it is baffling. Are they expecting to kick a ton of field goals this year? Is because a field goal is worth 3 points that they did a 3-year extension? Is that like trying to will something into the universe here? But you could tell how crazy this offseason's been if we have kicker extension news. It's just absolutely insane this year. I joke. This has been one of the more quieter off seasons. We've had to worry about players and their ability to stay clean in the offseason. For the most part, they have. However, we do need to report that Vikings wide receiver Jordan Addison last weekend was arrested for DUI. He was found asleep behind his vehicle. I believe he was blocking a lane, is what I read. None of this is smart, first of all. Second of all, I'm glad no one got hurt in a situation where someone could have easily gotten hurt. But there's also reports coming out from beat writers that they are saying that the Vikings are very upset with Jordan Addison here, and they are going to suspend Jordan Addison regardless if the NFL suspends him or not. What makes you of this, and what kind of suspension can you see a team impose in this situation?
Well, what makes it worse is the guy literally after the news came out that he was arrested for DUI posted on social media a big glass of mimosa that was sitting in front of him. Like, you got in trouble for drinking, so you took a picture of more alcohol? What kind of moron does that? So, I don't know. I think he's a talented kid. I think he's trying to end his career early. I don't know, but he's going to get suspended, especially with last year he was caught speeding like 100 and something miles per hour. And he said he had a sick dog, so he got off for that. But couple that with the recent charges, he's going to get suspended. And now it's 2 years in a row, so now it's becoming a trend, especially if it happens again. You don't want a guy who doesn't play because of dumb things that he does off the field. So you want them to be healthy, you want them to be clean nose and to be good football players. And right now, this isn't something the Vikings can afford to have with Hawkinson coming back from an injury. They just lost Kirk Cousins to the Falcons this offseason. JJ McCarthy isn't ready to play. Now they're playing with Sam Darnold at quarterback until JJ is ready to play. They can't rely on just Justin Jefferson to win games. That's not sustainable. So he did his team a disservice, and I think that I might lower the projections for the Vikings that I currently have.
Yeah, this is not smart moves that you want to see on a second-year player. Very rookie moves for a non-rookie. And hopefully he can get his act together, and hopefully he can find himself a quarterback that can get him the ball here over the course of 2024. But for me, totally expect a 2-game suspension from the Vikings. It sends a message, but not too harsh of a message to actually be too punitive on the team, especially if they do find themselves by any chance competing in 2024. I don't believe that it's likely, but if they do, like, they don't want to shoot themselves in the foot either.
Might be more than that. I'm thinking 4 games.
So somewhere between 2 and 4 games. Let's settle on 3. Call it a day. Since Dustin Hopkins got a 3-year deal and kickers kick for 3 points, we're brought to you by the number 3.
Just all right. Let's change it to a different number. Let's change it to 15, Jeff. Let's transition over to our 2024 top 15 tight ends. All right, number 15, Jennifer Lopez. All right, who you got?
See, I just took this podcast completely off the rails with my threes talk and my brought to you by the number 3. But coming in at 15 this year may surprise you. And he's actually one of your favorites. So for me this year will be Zach Ertz being my number 15 tight end. It's a big year for him because now he's playing with a rookie that may need an outlet to throw to. And Zach Ertz is that outlet in Washington for Jaden Daniels.
Interesting. I am much lower on him than you are. And that's because they drafted Ben Sinnott. So I think they're going to eat into each other.
That's not very nice, Alex.
They're going to eat into each other's production. I don't know how many yards Jaden Daniels is going to throw for this year, but I have them going 32 and 33. I think if you combine the production and put it in under Ertz, he might be close to 15, but I just don't see it.
You know what they say about rookie tight ends, though. So you might be a year early, which we know you are with rookies.
Yeah, I just think they're going to split. And I think Ertz he's been hurt and he's older now, and I just don't think he's got the full go in him right now.
Zach Ertz. Got it.
Yep. But my number 15 is the tight end out of New England, Hunter Henry. I think that he's going to be a friendly target to my boy Drake May. I think he's probably the number one option there, honestly, because we have no idea how the wide receiver room is going to shake out. And I think Van Pelt's offense heavily features tight ends. So I think he's going to be potential borderline tight end 1. And I think that he's going underdrafted in basically all drafts. So if you have a tight end premium and you need a backup tight end, I think he would be a good one to have. I also think he would be a good one to pair with other tight ends that are maybe injured or you're waiting to break out.
All right. So you believe that Drake May is going to play early on in this season? Because everything I've been hearing is it's Jacoby Brissett's team for at least the first half of 2024.
I don't think that they'll make it halfway through the season with Jacoby Brissett. I think he'll play a game or two, and then I think they'll have to put Drake May out there.
Okay. And just so we're clear, I have Hunter Henry as my 18th tight end. He will not appear on my list here. So I'm pretty close, but I just can't because I've been spurred by this guy before. Ironically, he finished 18th last year also. So
Are you going 14?
So I'll let you get us kicked off at number 14.
Okay. Number 14, I have Dallas Goedert out of Philadelphia.
What?
I think this is a good spot for him, Jeff. I think Barkley is going to eat into his target production, and I think that they added some low risk, high reward wide receivers in the draft as well. So again, Dallas Goedert for me is also aging. I just don't. I'm not as high on him as other people are. I feel like 14 is a good spot. Jeff, you got the wild eyes over there. What do you have to say about this?
So Goddard will be a little bit later in my picks here. But man, that's a little bit low for a tight end that's finished 10, 12, and 15 the last 3 years. And 15 was with missing the 4 games and I believe he went on IR for 4 games last year. So he was the number 8 tight end to end the season last year, the last 4 weeks. I think it's slightly low, but we will see in time here. Barkley will open up the offense for more.
They have a running back that can actually run the ball, and I think that A.J. Brown is clamoring to get more touches, and I think that they added more pass catchers. So I see Goddard finishing 14, which was higher than he did last year. And I think that there's a lot of good tight end talent this year.
Yeah, I can see that. But I will say that A.J. Brown was on the team last year. They did add Devontae Parker, but he retired. So now they added John Ross and a few others at wide receiver, but nothing major. But yeah, so I'll just hop right into my number 14. Number 14 here is going to be rookie Brock Bowers. I just think that he's going to take the job from Michael Mayers right away, and it's going to happen right from the get-go. You don't spend a high pick like this on a tight end and not use him in year one. And this is a weapon that both Minshew and O'Connell could use to kind of calm down, because they're not like the premier type quarterbacks. Neither one of them are like a top 15, top 20 quarterback in the league right now. Brock Bowers could be that tight end that kind of moves the ball while they're trying to get this offense down. Thoughts on Brock Bowers there?
It's hard to predict and project Brock Bowers because I don't know how effective the quarterbacks are going to be there. I don't know how creative that offense is going to be. I do feel like they're going to be behind in a few games, so they're going to pass a lot. And I know that they're planning on using Brock Bowers to be creative. He's basically a younger Kittle with even more pass catching chops. He can be used all over the place. He can be lined up at wide receiver, at inline tight end, as well as being a versatile guy as well. He can block. There's no reason why he shouldn't be out there. They also have the tight end that they took last year as well, so they can have 12 formations, which means two tight ends out there. Jacoby Myers is out there as well as Davante Adams. I think that it will be a creative offense. I think this is a reasonable spot to put him. I have him a little bit higher though because I believe in his talent.
Oh, I
And
didn't see that coming.
if Minshew is there, he'll get more intermediate targets. If Aiden O'Connell's out there, younger guys tend to rely on tight ends more. So last year, Aiden O'Connell lasered in on Davante Adams. I think he'll split between Davante Adams and Brock Bowers. So I like him. I think that would be probably closer to his floor, and I have him a little bit higher.
All right. So let me hop right into my number 13 now, since we're kind of going every other here. And I'm going to go with your guy, Dalton Schultz, here at number 13 with the Houston Texans.
I mean, that's a reasonable spot. I actually have him coming up shortly, but I have TJ Hawkinson here, and it's purely because of, well, not purely, but mostly because of coming off of an injury. I have him at 13. But also, quarterback downgrade. I think that if he was healthy, I'd probably have him in maybe the top 8 or 9. But I think that Schultz is a good spot at 13 because I have Schultz at 12. So we're just one spot off here.
Yeah, absolutely. So you just released your number 13 and you went with Schultz at 12. Is that correct?
Yeah. TJ Hawkinson at 13 and Schultz at 12. So
are you
for
worried?
Me,
are you worried about targets for Schultz?
Yeah, I would have had him higher if Diggs didn't go there. But on the flip side, I think that there is a non-zero chance that CJ Stroud is the leading passer in the NFL this season. He might have the most passes and most yards. So potentially Schultz could have a really solid year regardless.
Yeah, I'm worried. I'm worried about his overall target share with Collins, Diggs, Dell. mixing it back there. So it'll be interesting because that offense has a chance to be fired this year, just with the amount of firepower that they have. So we'll hop over to my number 12 here, and I'm going to go with Cole Kmet. He's playing with a rookie quarterback. He's playing with a lot of wide receiver talent around him. The one solace that I'll take in this whole thing is the fact that rookies tend to gravitate towards the tight end position as like a safety blanket, and Cole Kmet is one of the best safety blankets in the NFL. So I have to give Cole Kmet here a try here in my top 12, and I think he's an every week starter.
So you're worried about Dalton Schultz with the target share, but you have Cole Kmet who's competing with DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, as well as Swift from the backfield. I feel like those are guys are going to take a lot more targets than the Texans guys. I mean, Keenan Allen was one of the most targeted wide receivers per game last year. I think top 3, top 5 most targeted wide receiver last year, and DJ Moore was the number 1 option for the Bears last year, and Rome Odunze is probably a franchise wide receiver. I think the 3 of those probably higher total caliber than the 3 Texans wide receivers, and I'm a Texans fan.
Yeah, we will see. What are we on? Number 11 now? All right. This one's not going to be popular. I don't ever feel great about this one, but He was the number one tight end the last 4 weeks last year. We're going to go with David Njoku, who actually lived up to a lot of his hype last year, but we don't know how much of it was Flacco, how much of it was offense. But he did enough last year where I'm willing to take a risk on him here at number 11.
Oh, he's actually number 16 for me. He just missed the list. And that's because, like you said, the last the last few weeks was, in my opinion, Joe Flacco targeting him. I don't think he has the same rapport with Watson. So I don't feel good about taking him this year. So for me, he's 16. 11 for me is Jake Ferguson with Dallas. And that's because he really only has to compete with CeeDee Lamb. So I feel like he's the number 2 option there. And I think, yeah, Brandon Cooks will probably take some targets as well. Maybe get one of the 2 Jalen's to be the next guy. We don't know which one. I think it'll probably be Tolbert. I think he'll have the first chance anyway. But we'll see if they bring in somebody else. I don't know what Dallas is doing, but right now Ferguson looks like the number 2 option and what's probably going to be a heavy passing team because their running back situation doesn't look great. So I like Ferguson here. I don't think Ferguson's that great of a talent, which is why he's only number 11 for me.
So Ferguson is 16 for me, just so we have the funniness of this whole thing where your number 11 is my 16 and your number 11 is my 16. So interesting. It just shows how close tight ends are here, and it shows not to reach for any of these guys, especially where we're at right now. The only person so far that I would have reached for on your list a little bit is Hockenson, just because I do believe in his talent and the offense may run through him this year if he's healthy.
For me, Hawkinson's like betting on the second half of the year. So Hawkinson seems like he would be really good for a playoff run, but it's just the beginning of the year that I worry about with him.
If he was fully healthy, where would you have him?
Top 9, somewhere in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd probably go top 7. Not quite there yet.
Oh, if he was healthy and he still had Kirk Cousins, he'd definitely be probably top 5 or 6 for me.
He'd be approaching the top 3 for me with Kirk Cousins.
Well, I think that we've got some differences coming up for sure. We'll see if number 10, if we have a difference here. I have Pat Freiermuth with Pittsburgh at number 10. I've always believed in his talent, and now he's got a tight end friendly coach with Arthur Smith. Honestly, there might be 2 usable tight ends with Pittsburgh this year, just like what he did with Atlanta last year. So Darnell Washington may also be a sneaky usable guy, but I really like Freiermuth. They, to me, don't really have a legitimate option outside of George Pickens at wide receiver. So I think that he's going to have a good chance at getting touchdowns. I think he's going to have a good chance of getting yards and targets. Pat Freiermuth is a sneaky get for me, and I think he's still going relatively late in drafts.
Yeah, you may not even need to scoop him until the last round because he is my tight end number 19. So we do have quite a big disparity here. And I can hop right into my number 10, and that is TJ Hockenson. I do believe in his talent. I think if he played the entire year, he would be a top 7 tight end. If he had Kirk Cousins, he would be a top 5 tight end. I just feel like I believe in his talent, and I believe how much the offense runs through Hockenson, and I believe that will be the exact same way as soon as he's fully healthy. But it'll be him and Justin Jefferson that are peppered with targets, and they kind of help each other out because it takes pressure off of one another.
All right, who you got at number 9?
So number 9 on my list here is Dallas Goedert. He is better than what you think he is right now. Dallas Goedert is still going to be a huge focal point of this offense. I would like to challenge you because of what we were talking about a little bit earlier. What kind of stats do you think Dallas Goedert will put up? For example, I have him at 68 catches, 784 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Only 4 touchdowns, and he still clocks in as a top 10 tight end for me. So I don't know if you have those readily available, but and I kind of caught you off guard with the stats here.
Are you asking me what stats I have for Goddard? Is that what you said?
Out yet?
What stats I have for Goddard? Let's see. Let me highlight him here. I have 91 targets for 62 catches for 626 yards and 4 touchdowns.
So more time.
4, yeah.
You have how many touchdowns again? 4.
4.
Okay, we're the same. We are the same. So
What's the yardage and catches you have for him?
68 and 784.
Yeah, so you're marginally higher than me. I just applied a lot for AJ Brown because I think AJ Brown's going to have a bigger year.
We'll see. I mean, this is his third year on the team, so I don't know how much of an increase you can expect.
Well, I think that we have to consider who the coach is, and the coach is Kellen Moore, who heavily targets the number one option. I don't think Kellen Moore utilizes the tight end position as much as other coaches do. Just trying to see what he did with the Chargers last year.
He used Gerald Everett until Gerald Everett ran the wrong route in like week 2 or 3 last year.
Yeah, 70 targets for Gerald Everett, 51 catches, 411 yards, and 3 touchdowns.
And Gerald Everett's not half the man that Goddard is.
Not half the man. Maybe he's 2/3 the player. I mean, I don't know, but let me see what I should have done Philly and meant to do Dallas. I think I was typing in Dallas the team, and then I clicked on Dallas Goddard. Let's see, 2022. Dalton Schultz, 81 targets, 57 catches, 577 yards, 5 touchdowns. I feel like I'm pretty on par with the scheme that he runs, and I feel like I've given him more than what Dalton Schultz got. I feel like I've scaled that up from 15 over 15 games to the 17. I don't think that I have Jalen Hurts throwing as many yards as what other people have for him.
What do you have Hurts at?
He's less than 4,000.
I have him at 4,077 yards.
So, I mean, that can explain the difference right there.
I just think it's going to be a much more pass-happy offense without the push or the brotherly shove, whatever we're calling it these days. I think that's going to go to the wayside, especially Kelsey retired.
Maybe.
And there's no rumors about him coming back or coming out of retirement, just so we're clear.
All right, so that was your number 9, right?
Yes, sir. You are up.
So this is where I have Brock Bowers. I think Brock Bowers is a generational talent, and I think that he's got more yak in him, some yards after the catch, than Goddard does.
He's got more yak in him.
I have him having similar targets and receptions, but 782 yards and 6 touchdowns.
I trust one quarterback over the other.
I just think the Raiders will have to throw a lot.
I'm hoping. They don't really have a great running back, at least in my opinion. I know there's people that we play fantasy leagues with that are big on Madison and big on Zamir White, and I don't really see it.
I think Zamir White can be serviceable. I think he can put up similar stats to what Singletary did with the Texans last year. I think he can be usable.
All right, who do you got at number 8?
All right, at number 8, I have Mr. George Kittle out of San Francisco.
I didn't see that.
I like him, and I think he is coming a little bit off of an injury. But if Ayuk gets traded, then I will bump Kittle up a few spots here. But right now, I think he's a safe floor. However, he was kind of inconsistent fantasy production wise until there's injuries at the wide receiver position, and then he blew up. So that's why I have him a little bit lower probably than what you would have. Jeff, how do you feel about that, and who do you have at 8?
So you're a little bit lower than Kittle on me, which is surprising considering how many leagues that you have Kittle in and how much of a champion you have been for Kittle over the last few years. So I'm a little bit floored on that front. But as far as this group of guys here, I could see any of them go, and I think Kittle will still have a very big part in this offense, considering Brock Purdy is still growing as an NFL quarterback. But my number 8 here, and this might be surprising to you because I know he's going to be a little bit higher for you, and you're not really a big fan of him either. So, or at least you weren't until this past year. But Evan Ingram is going to be my number 8 tight end, and yeah, I feel like his targets may fall this year. Now have Brian Thomas Jr., and they will be going in different directions here with the football.
We differ here. I'm higher up on him than you, and it might be to a surprising amount, but I don't see how his target share could decrease from last year, considering they basically one for one replaced Ridley with Thomas and replaced Zay Jones with Gabriel Davis. So I feel like at a minimum, you can slot in the same production he had last year, if not more. So I have yet to see Trevor Lawrence favor a rookie. I mean, you talk about Aaron Rodgers not wanting to throw the ball to young wide receivers. I don't really think Trevor Lawrence is thrown to a young wide receiver. I think he's always thrown to someone who's already been in the league for a year or two. So we'll see how that goes. I think Brian Thomas is going to take a year to kind of develop. I don't know for sure. He's going to come out as a superstar year one. I think he's got a lot of talent, but he's got stuff to develop. So I mean, I can understand why you put Evan Ingram here, and I think, like you said, you can rearrange this order however you want. I just think Evan Ingram is gonna get a lot of targets, and in PPR league, I think Evan Ingram is someone I'm probably heavily gonna target.
Yeah, and I got some studs ahead of him, and I got a couple of young guys that I think are going to just take that next step forward, but we will see.
That was your number 8, right?
Yes, sir. So I believe I'm up on number 7. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, we are gonna go with a young third year tight end in Trey McBride here, and I believe that he's going to be either the number 1 or number 2 target for Kyler Murray this year as he develops chemistry with Marvin Harrison Jr. So very self-explanatory, and a guy that finished 9 last year without Kyler Murray for the majority of the season.
Interesting. I thought you would be higher on him than I am, but I have him a little bit higher than this.
Nope.
And it might just be a matter of a touchdown or two, maybe. Difference that has him higher on my list. I think it's a decent option. I don't know how many passing yards Kyler Murray's going to throw for, but I do think that McBride and Marvin Harrison Jr. are the top 2 options on that team. I think that they're going to try to be competitive, and they might surprise some people, getting a couple more wins than people are expecting. So I think that's a reasonable slot for him. I have at number 7 your Buffalo fellow in Dalton Kincaid. I don't know how Buffalo's offense is going to shake out. I don't know if Kincaid's going to be heavily targeted. I don't know if Shakir, if that I don't know if he's going to be targeted. I don't know if Keon Coleman's going to be the number 1 guy. I don't know if Curtis Samuel, how involved he's going to be. So they've got 4 options there, and I think it'll probably be evenly spread out because there's no alpha. I think Kincaid otherwise would be higher on this list if I knew for certainty that he's higher up in the pecking order. But I think he has a lot of talent. They spent good capital on him last year. I'm kind of buying into that. And Josh Allen, he just lost Diggs and he lost Gabriel Davis. That target pie has to spread out to these other guys because it has to go somewhere. Jeff, what do you think about Kincaid at 7?
I think that's a little bit too low because I think there is a greater than none chance that he isn't the recipient of the majority of targets. What weapons were you worried about when it came to Kincaid?
Keon Coleman and
Okay.
Curtis Samuel and
they're all going to be learning the offense, and Shakir's going to be taking a step up from a role that he had last year. Kincaid will be in the role that he had last year, and he was growing into it as well. So I just think that Josh Allen's going to be looking for that safety blanket. He's going to be more mistake-free, especially to begin the year when they are winning games easily, more easily than most. I just foresee big things for Kincaid this year.
I have him at 7. So, I mean, he's in the middle of the tight end ones. I think he has high upside, but I think he has a low floor.
Low floor? He finished tight end 12 in his rookie year.
I mean, that's the bottom of the tight end ones.
But that's his floor, though, a tight end 1, right?
Well, tight ends aren't as deep as wide receiver.
We'll see. He definitely has Knox beat, and we'll see where they go with that. All right, who do you got at number 6?
At number 6, I have Kyle Pitts out of Atlanta. I think this is the year that he has to produce or he fades into non-existence in his professional career. I think he's got the best quarterback he's ever played with and he's got a new coaching staff that knows how to use the tight ends. They're going to line him up at tight end and wide receiver. And he only has Drake London to compete with, who himself has to prove that he was worth the draft capital that they spent on him. Kirk Cousins has utilized tight ends his entire career and made them fantasy relevant. So to me, it's a perfect storm. And if it's not this year, then it's never.
Interesting. Don't hate the pick, but we're going to go into my number. Let's see what number I'm on right now. Number 6 here, and that is going to be George Kittle. So I'm much higher than you on George Kittle this year. I still think he's going to be a big part of this offense. I know they brought in a whole bunch of other weapons, but they're young. And Kyle Shanahan has shown in the past that he doesn't like to use young weapons quickly. Look at Brandon Ayuk spending some time in the doghouse. And even Debo, they didn't even want to pay Debo initially. He had to request a trade before they paid him. So I just think that he's a staple of this offense, and he's going to be that staple and be that safety blanket, along with Christian McCaffrey for Brock Purdy, who is going into his 3rd year. We have to be very clear about that. Brock Purdy is a 3rd-year quarterback. Like, he has not had this long runway of a career yet. Like, he is still learning, and I think George Kittle is going to be a big part of that. As long as he can recover from that core muscle surgery. He did finish tight end 5 last year. So like, for the entire season, he finished tight end 5. For him to be tight end 6 this year, that's actually a little step down from last year in production.
Well, part of that production was with Debo out, and I think Ayuk missed a couple games as well. So part of it was a boost for those reasons. But I don't hate it.
Yeah. All right. So on to my number 5, which is really interesting because I thought I was going to be lower than you on this person, but Kyle Pitts at number 5 for me. And that's a pretty big deal considering where Kyle Pitts has been the last 2 years, kind of in no man's land. And with Desmond Ridder throwing him the football, but now he has a real NFL quarterback and a real NFL backup too, if we want to talk about Michael Penix here. Like, the fact that the Falcons made sure that he had at least 2 quarterbacks that would get him the football this year. I do expect him to be targeted early and often. I actually expect Drake London to take a nice step forward this year as well, which I know we're not talking about wide receivers right now, but that's kind of my expectation right now.
Yeah, I mean, we're one spot away from each other, and we might have similar stats if we shouted them out. But I mean, I don't hate it. I feel like Pitts, Kincaid, McBride, Kittle, I feel like you can move those around in any order. And speaking of those names, I have Trey McBride here at 5. I think that these young guys are finally going to have a chance to live up to their potential this season and both shine. You've already talked about McBride earlier, but I think this is reasonable for any of these guys.
Right.
So
what do you got up now?
4. So 4 for me is a guy that's returning, and that is Mark Andrews with Baltimore. I think that he's been someone who's been close to the number 1 spot a few times, and I think you got to show him some respect and put him out there. I'm not going to anoint him as a number 1 guy this time, but I think likely we'll share some targets with him. I think they finally have a wide receiver who is reasonably good in Flowers, and they keep on insisting that Rashad Bateman be a thing. So I don't know how many targets he's going to get, but Mark Andrews is the guy that Lamar Jackson trusts the most, and he's the red zone target for him. So I think he's back in the top 4 for me.
Yeah, he's back in the top 4 for me, but he's not going to be at number 4. At number 4 here, this is going to be really high, and this is going to be really bold, but this is Dalton Kincaid's spot at number 4. He's going to crack the top 4 for me, and he could have a really big year. This probably would have been Kittle's spot if he wasn't coming off the core muscle surgery. I probably would have moved him and Pitts up and Kincaid down, but I feel really comfortable with saying that Pitts and Kincaid will finish pretty close in production this year, and that's saying a lot considering where Pitts was last year. And Kincaid's only a 2nd-year tight end, so it's not like he's got this major runway or anything of that sort. But I do believe that he could be. So it's in the realm of possibility of being Josh Allen's number 1 weapon this year.
That's a little high for me. Kind of feel like that's drafting at his ceiling. But again, we don't know how this receiving room is going to work with Buffalo at this moment. You could be right. He could be the number one guy and be fully justified being taken there. I just wouldn't want to draft him at that kind of capital because I feel like I said, you're drafting him at a ceiling. So that would be kind of scary for me personally.
Hey, I like to live on the edge and live bold, and I will continue to do so here. All right, so moving on to my number 3. This is where I am comfortable taking Mark Andrews. And so we're one spot off here, not a big deal. And I think he returns to his form prior, and he's probably the number 1 or the number 2 target in that offense this year.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable spot for him. My probably too high a crazy pick, but in my opinion, it's probably actually a good spot for him is Evan Ingram at number 3. I think his targets are only going to go up. I think he had low touchdowns last year, and I think he's due for positive touchdown regression. And I think that the fantasy community is selling him short. I think he's going to be, along with Christian Kirk, the two focal points of the offense until Brian Thomas Jr. is up and running, and he would eventually be the star of the show. But I don't think Brian Thomas Jr. is going to be ready as a rookie to be a full go. I think he'll be decoy. I think he'll run a smaller set of routes. So the guys who are more versatile coming out of the gate and more trusty are going to be Evan Ingram and Christian Kirk. And Evan Ingram, I'm higher on than Christian Kirk so far.
That hurt you to say, though. I feel the pain coming from you over there, because I know that you are a big Christian Kirk fan and not a big Evan Ingram fan as of a year ago.
Well, when both Ridley and Kirk were out there, Kirk got more targets and more catches than Ridley. So just throwing that out there, Jeff. Now Ridley's gone. I think both those guys are going to get the targets. All right, moving on to number 2. And I'm curious if we're going to be the same here or if we're going to have these next two guys reversed from each other. So Jeff, after much debate and fiddling and tweaking my projections, I actually have Sam Laporta at number 2. He was at number 1 for a second, and then it changed. But I have Sam Laporta at number 2. I think he had a very high rookie season that is going to be hard to replicate. And I think that Kelce had an injury-plagued and Taylor Swift-plagued season and could have had better production. And I think for me, that knocks Sam Laporta at number 2. How do you have your top 2?
So I also have Sam Laporta at number 2, which I feel in the minority this year with that, because I feel like everyone is wanting to put Laporta number 1 and knock Kelce down to number 2. And I still feel like Travis Kelce did enough last year to be warranted in the number 1 spot. So I'll also do my number 1 here at the same time. Travis Kelce, the last 3 years, finished tight end 2, 1, and 3. That to me warrants a number 1 tight end ranking going into a year. So I just believe that Kelce is going to be the tight end to own again this year.
I think he's the safest of all of the tight ends, and I think that, man, I think hopefully these other wide receivers they brought in between Worthy and Marquise Brown will help stretch the field, which will make Travis Kelce more open. That's the hope. I do think Travis was injured last year. I do think that Taylor Swift can be very distracting for him. So hopefully he's healthy. He's better adjusted. He's going to be more open, and he's always been fairly consistent, even when he was the only primary guy. So I think Kelce's the safest number 1. Sam Laporta obviously has the sky high potential if you can expand on the previous season, but I think it's pretty good. Jeff, are there any of these rankings of mine that you don't really like at all, or that are just odd, too high, too low?
No, I actually recorded them all because it'll be interesting to see at the end of the year to where everyone settles and see who was right here in their ranking. And I know we have injuries and stuff like that. And you had your Pat Fryermuth of the world crop up and your Hunter Henrys of the world. Mostly everything was right. Where did you have Cole Kmet again? Do you have him on a list somewhere?
It's number 20.
What? You really don't
And
like him this year.
I mean, I like Cole Kmet. I just think Keenan Allen and DJ Moore and Rome Odunze are probably edge out the Texans wide receivers. And I think that CJ Stroud is a better quarterback than Caleb Williams this year. So I don't think there's as much yardage or as much catches, targets. I don't think that there's enough to split between those four guys. So to me, Cole Kmet's the odd guy out.
The only thing I'll say to that is rookies can tend to use tight ends. I do think Rome Odunze is the odd man out this year. And that doesn't mean he won't have a good year and he's not draftable. I'm not saying anything along those lines, but I don't think he's going to be a startable asset in fantasy this year. The only other thing I'll say about Kmet is he finished tight end 21 in 2021. And then the last 2 years, he's finished tight end 7. So it's kind of why I put a little respect on him. And I do believe that Caleb Williams is a better NFL quarterback than Mr. Justin Fields is. So I had to throw in one of my Justin Fields takes of the day. So
I thought you were about to say CJ Stroud. I'm like, we have to wait to see that.
well, we didn't know Stroud was going to be as good as Stroud was. So to be fair,
I mean, he was my number one rookie quarterback. I mean, obviously before the S2 dropped, but you got to think though, Jeff. Last year, yes, it was Justin Fields, but he really only had DJ Moore and Cole Kmet to throw to. And now they added 2 wide receivers. They added Keenan Allen, who was the number 3 wide receiver on a per game basis last year, as well as Rome Odunze. And they added Swift, who is a passing down weapon. So I think that there's more heads to feed. They added Gerald Everett and Mercedes Lewis at the tight end position too. I like Cole Kmet a lot. I just don't think that he's gonna get the numbers that you want.
So I know this is off topic, but so I feel like Mercedes Lewis is going to be a blocking tight end, which is totally fine. Yep. Do you believe that they have that pounding running back in Chicago right now, or is that a piece that they're still missing, or could Roschon Johnson be the guy that kind of steps up and plays into that role?
I mean, I don't really feel like they have an actual power back. The closest guy to a power back is probably Roschon Johnson, but I wouldn't call him a power back. So I think that there's a chance they could pass quite a bit and pass to their running backs as well. So even if Caleb Williams outperforms or puts up bigger numbers than I have currently projected to him, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to Cole Kmet.
Right. Yeah, I was more asking, like, are they missing that pounding running back? Is it going to be Cole Kmet that's actually running the ball at the goal line?
There you go. Make him useful. Yep. You're
I don't know.
You're paying him all this money. Just run Cole Kmet behind the line.
I think that's a missing component of this offense. They don't have that 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2 running back to get that first down.
I'm just wondering, who do you think is Chicago's number 1 wide receiver this season?
I think it's going to be Keenan Allen this year, because I think that there's a good connection between Caleb Williams and Keenan Allen that extends beyond the game. And I think that's only going to help them in the game. And I think DJ Moore takes a back seat this year, unfortunately.
I have DJ Moore getting more yards, but Keenan Allen getting more catches.
Who's getting more touches?
I think I have Keenan Allen getting.
It'll be interesting. He'll be one of the more fun. It'll be one of the more fun teams to watch this year. It'll be one of the more fun quarterbacks to watch this year as a rookie enters the league. But that is our top 15.
He did sign his rookie deal, which we should have covered in the news section.
I did see that, but I think it's a foregone conclusion that all rookies eventually sign. When's the last time a rookie hasn't signed?
Well, he was the one that supposedly wanted partial ownership, which was never going to happen. And there was some talk about him potentially going back to college, but this puts that to bed.
Speaking of bed, we've put the tight end rankings to bed this year.
Yep, we sure did. Now we're about to put y'all to bed.
Good night, everybody. Sleep tight.
All right, well, that does it for this episode of the Never Too Early Fantasy Football Podcast. Thank you all for downloading and listening to this episode, and please don't forget to like and subscribe. Please leave us a comment and share the show. Every little bit helps.
You can find us on all podcasting apps by searching N2E Fantasy. and with our handle at N2eFantasy on all social media platforms. Please join our community and give us a follow. Until next time, take care of yourselves, and remember, it's truly never too early for fantasy football. Thank you again.
Hi, everybody.